Hey, I'm back, everyone. Hopefully y'all can say hello. Okay, everyone, if you can refresh, if you can hear me, refresh. Hello. All right, sorry everyone for that. Hopefully everybody will be rejoining here shortly. And we don't have any more issues. Hey, I can see and hear you. Yes, yes. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay. Well, we're going to get going now that I lost a little bit of time. So please bear with me. I really appreciate it, guys. Let's get on to the presentation. Okay, green screen. Okay, skin tone. So green really matters for a lot of reasons, and the biggest reason is going to be your skin tone. There's a lot of greens in our skin tone, and so there's a lot of other colors not green in our skin tone. So green's really easy to remove without affecting the way human skin looks. Green color space shows up best and has the best lumens when it comes to video versus film. Now, blue is usually the other option. It's a blue or a green screen. And when to use blue is when you're shooting with things that are green that need to show up, right? So blue is also another one of those colors that's not going to affect our skin color. It's not as good as green, but it's mostly as good. And so, think about if they're doing the Lord of the Rings, there's so many greens in their outfits and stuff. They're probably using blue because of that. So that's really the reasons why you choose between the others. Let's see here. Let others re-enter again. Yes, please let everybody know. Hopefully they do, and go from there. Okay, so let's see. What are the green Hulk uses for green screen? I bet you they use blue for green. Well, no, they use CG, and Hulk is not real. I guess maybe the original Hulk when they used to paint a guy green. Was it Lou Ferrigno or whatever? But yeah, no, definitely not. So definitely be wary of that. Okay, so for your backdrops, there's a lot of options. There's like the idea of an infinity wall, which is down there with the cars there, and the idea of infinity walls that you could get from you can fit the whole entire thing in there. So if it's a human, you can shoot them from head to toe, and no problems. They can outstretch their arms as far as they want. You'll be able to key them all. It's a wide enough shot, but not everybody needs that. That is Santa is real. That's why we don't use red screens. Come on. Okay. So the idea of these infinity rooms is sometimes they're all sorts of different colors, but in this case they're green for green screening. And the big deal for there is the transition from vertical to horizontal. So where the floor meets the ceiling, where the floor meets the wall, there is a gentle swoop there. And the idea there is not to create shadows, because shadows will make your key pulling much more difficult. You can use cloth. I have a green screen backdrop. It's great. The big idea is just make sure you don't have any wrinkles. If you see the shot, you see the image on the right there, probably, well, with that lighting, and with those wrinkles, they're probably going to have an issue with their green screen key there. And you can see there on the ground, they also have paper. So they make the transition just by the cloth there going onto the ground and then rolling over. But then they also have one more piece there that is making it so they can get a little bit wider shot. Walls are, of course, permanent and smooth, which is great. This is what you're going to see in the news. This is definitely what you're going to see in any kind of on any kind of set that is fully green screen or fully blue screen. But the thing is cloths, pop-ups, all sorts of things like that are actually really helpful because, I've done quite a bit of green screen that has been through the window of a car. So it's, instead of having out the window, there's a green screen, so you can replace it with whatever you'd like. And you don't need a really big piece of green for that. Now, the big thing about the size of your green screen is that it's very hard to not have green spill, meaning green reflecting onto your subject if they are too close to the green screen, if they're too close to the wall. So place your subject 2 times the distance from the screen to the camera. So you can see there's a lot of space here. And this is going to help if you do have wrinkles, if you're shooting in a shallower depth of field, to smooth them out a little bit. That will help. And then, really the big thing here is that bright green is very reflective. If you're wearing a white shirt next to a green screen, you're gonna have to get pretty far from it. So sometimes darker darker clothing is helpful. But that in this case, the idea is just to get so far away that the spill isn't happening on you. Now you can use things like CTG or CTO or CTG. Minus green. MGs, filters, gels. And what that'll do is help take away the green on your subject. So you can sometimes put that on your rim light, so that you're actually having minus green on your shoulder, so that spill isn't happening as much. But if you're really, the biggest thing is just get your subject away from the screen. Now what that does is it means your screen needs to get bigger to be able to fit the full size of your subject matter. So in that case, you're going to want to make sure you understand the movements of your subject so that you aren't so they're not getting outside of the green screen area or any place you're going to use a mat to get rid of. And that's one of our first tips, really, is that if you aren't using any space of the green, you don't need to actually key it. If nothing actually passes in that area, you can just mat it out. Just, use just crop it out of the area, and then you don't have to key that. That's one of the biggest tricks that I remember learning right off the bat when I started doing green screen is like, if there's an area that's not there, you don't have to worry about how well the lighting is in that area. So making sure the area that you're going to have your mat around, and your background and your subject and your subject's movements don't go outside of that area. So setting up lighting. So separate lighting for screen and subject. Sorry, not quite on it. Please briefly explain 2 times the distance from the screen to the camera. Okay. Let's see here. This distance right here, think of that as 1, and this is 2. This is 2 distances. So, this is all approximation. This is just an idea here that you want to have your subject further from your screen. But in this case, you want your subject half as close to the camera as they are the background. So if this is 1, this is half. If this is 1, this is 2. Hopefully that makes sense. Oh wait, if 2 feet from camera, 4 feet from screen. You got it. All right, so separate background lighting from the screen, and then even quality and temperature with no hot spots. So if you have a camera that has zebras on it, now zebras are an indication of lumens that are reaching to the sensor, and what they'll do is show you what is overexposed or underexposed. If you're able to adjust those zebras, you can make it so that you can see the hot spots on your background. So when you're lighting, you can actually see where you're too bright or too dark, or how the actual intensity of the light. It's a fun little trick. It'll help you get even lighting of your background. You don't need it otherwise. I mean, zebras are helpful otherwise, but that they can be really helpful to help you find hot spots on your green screen. So the idea here is, if you light your background and light your subject separate from each other, that one, your background's going to be evenly lit. It's not going to have shadows from your subject, because it's not needing light from your subject. As well, your subject is now well illuminated so that it separates and it has a lot of contrast from the background. Contrast really, should the subject be clickbait? Backlit, oh, yes, I'm sorry. I read that wrong. Clickbait. Should the subject be backlit? Peter, the subject should have a rim light or a light that is helping separate them from the background. So yes, this picture is actually not a good representation of that. In this case, so you can see this, we don't have a backlight, but I would recommend one, at least one, so that you have a light that is illuminating around the edges of your subject, because what that'll do is help separate you from the background, create even more contrast to the background. And that also will help you kill spill if you have any deal with that when you're dealing with lighting. All right, so the big thing here is, when you're lighting your subject, you want to match the lighting of which the composition it's going into. So make sure you know what the background is going to be, what you're going to be replacing the green screen with, so that you can light your subject accordingly. You can see in these two images here, so you want to think, you see these two images, one obviously fits and one does not, right? Now, I think a little bit of that is what they're wearing. But the big thing is the lady on the left is super evenly lit. So I'm not sure if you answer this, but what's the best webcam for green screen, if there is such a thing? I did not answer that, and there is not such a thing if it's actually called a webcam, because most webcams are garbage. Using a different camera. A lot of the mirrorless cameras now from every brand now can be used as a webcam. Definitely going to be more helpful there. You could use a GoPro or something like that, but a GoPro is usually really wide, and it's going to be more difficult to have a background that's that big. Yeah. Okay, so back onto the subject lighting. So you want to light them so that they fit into the scene. So, I think, there was so much green screen in, like, say, The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings. That's a really great example, because, they were in dark, moody places, yet the background, they weren't super evenly lit just because they're green screen. So the idea here is to light your subject so that they can exist in that world. You want to evenly light your background so it's easy to key, but then your subject should match the composition it's going into. Really it's all about the setting. Is your room full of hard or soft light? What's the size of the light source? What's the direction of the light source? Paying attention to in the scene you're going to be placing them in. If they were there, what would they be lit by? How bright would it be? Those kinds of things. Those are the types of thoughts you should think of before you even set up anything, because that will help you define the lighting you put on your subject matter, and your background will always want to be even. So light quality here. This is obviously, the same background picture with two images in it. And the girl on the left, although she could be in shadow, her shadows aren't quite as dark as the shadows you see in the scene, like underneath the arch and whatnot. What if the green screen is set up at a 90-degree angle? I'm trying to use the cameras at once at different angles, then put green on it so that every angle your camera sees, the background is green. This is done in lots of different ways, but mostly just, setting up multiple green screens so that every angle, everything your camera can see, if the background isn't green, you're going to have a hard time keying it. Unless you're not going to be in that area, then you can just, crop it out, or use a garbage mat, as the term is. So this is, setting your subject up. So you can see here on the good one, on the right, they're lit by light coming from the same area. The shadows are falling in the same area from the same directionality. They seem like they're in the scene. Whereas the girl on the left, although she might be in the shade of something you can't see, even then it would be a bad shot because of how darker she is from the background. Can you talk a little bit about the proper backlight? Yes. So you can see me here. I have my shoulders are a little brighter than the front part of my shoulder here, right? Now, what that does in this scene is it allows me to have depth. It gives you lighting cues that are helping you see this flat image having more depth. So I have more contour on my shoulders, and it separates me from the background. The same thing is true for green screen. You're still going to want to be able to shape your subject's lighting so that they have more depth to them, so they're not just evenly lit and they're going to show up like these images that I showed you that are just stock images photoshopped onto the backgrounds. And that what this is going to do is, one, you can see the illumination of my shoulders is a little bit brighter. And because of that, it will help it will get rid of the splash of green that might be happening, the spill of green from your background. But what it'll also do is create a better edge for your green screen key to come up against, because the difficulty with pulling a key is going to be the places where you're getting rid of the key and where it meets, right? So I always call it the chicken wing, the armpit area. If you have someone that moves their arms too much, this is going to be an area that just every once in a while it's going to peak green. And so those are going to be hard areas. People with wispy hair, that's also hard. I right now, other than my hat, if I had my hat off, I have dark hair. So dark hair with a dark shirt with a green screen, great combination. A light blonde with a white shirt on a green screen is going to be more difficult because of the contrast between the color of their hair and the background that you're trying to get rid of. The larger the contrast between your subject matter and the background, the easier the key will be. However, you want to make sure that you're not lighting just to pull a good key. You want to light to actually fit the scene and the mood. So hopefully that'll, or am I in front of a green screen? No, I'm not. This is just shallow depth of field. I'm at f4 at 100 millimeter. Okay, back to the presentation. So here's position and intensity, key light, main light of source, which should be like your main light source, right? So it'd be the sun or an open window or something like that. And the fill, just like in normal lighting, the fill determines the amount of contrast relation to the key. So the fill light is to get rid of the shadows as much as you need them to go away, depending on how much you fit into the actual scene. Okay, reflections and shadows cause subject can. I'm sorry, I'm stuttering a little bit because I'm flustered from the beginning of the presentation here. Take a little drink there. Sorry to make you listen to that. Okay, reflections and shadows. They cause the subject, because the subject is too close to the screen, and reflections can lead to unwanted transparency. So you can see this girl's face. For people with curly hair like an afro, will the distance of the subject and green screen help that? Yes, Kenny, along with that backlight, that rim light. The idea of the rim light is just to create more separation. So even though it might get brighter around the edges of it, if it's bright like a light, it's going to not be green and not disappear when you pull the key from the subject. But yes, all matters of costuming and or makeup and hair all need to be considered when doing green screen. Obviously, someone with a green shirt is going to be a real poor green screen subject, right? Someone with really light blonde hair after they've been swimming, probably bad hair to be keying. So work with those things, but you don't always have the answer, right? So maybe you're shooting someone that's going to be all in white and they are blonde haired, right? What are you going to do there? Well, you're going to use a good rim light to help contrast the subject matter from the background. And what it'll do is it'll just mean a really harder edge for it to come in contact with. So here's this girl, this key here. We're pulling this key, and there was spill on her face. And so you can see that she has part of her face is missing. And that's because maybe the green was spilling on it, so she was too close to the screen. Also, shadows in general can make difficulties in acquiring a clean key, but it's more shadows in your background or shadows from your subject onto your background. So make sure to have your lights, like in this case here, off 45 degrees so that their shadows aren't being cast right onto your background. Up high, more vertical. Really, the position of your lights are going to have to be really important to. They're going to be important to make sure that you have good separation. What's your question, Philip? Have you ever talked about green screen or APP by Hollywood Camera Work? I think it helps quite a bit. I'm not sure, Philip, what that is. It's a green screener app, I guess. No, I've never used it. So be careful with the spill and whatnot. So here's some more of that lighting. Now, lighting is key for all green screen. If you don't do your lighting right, the key will be very difficult, if not impossible to pull. So I'm guessing most people, most you all that are in here that are wanting to learn how to do better green screen are hoping to find the post-production answer. And the answer really is light better. So in this case, the backlight with a minus green gel to make the subject on the subject, to make light white on the subject's shoulder and hair. So the idea there is that you're going to get rid of the green that would be included in part as part of the key when you're pulling it, but getting rid of it, and move your subject further from the backdrop. So in this case right here, the light is going here, it's hitting the green screen, and it's going to spill all over the shoulders of this person. So if this is the space you have, I've had to shoot green screen in small spaces, then try to put a light over the top of them or just behind them, probably more like here or right here. And you want to be hitting their shoulders and their head. What you don't want to be doing is casting long shadows on the nose or the wells of the eyes. You don't want to be creating unwanted shadows in general. So using something that has barn doors or using a flag, which is just something solid that'll block the light, and using more contoured light like a hard light rather than soft light, which is going to want to wrap around things. Thanks, Craig. Please keep links out of our chat here. Not really. We aren't able to make sure those links are safe for our audience, so we want to make sure not to use them if we can. So in this case, see, we just moved the person away from the screen and they got less spill as well. Then we aren't having to consider the lighting of the background as it illuminates our subject. We're able to light our subject separately and different than our actual green screen. I appreciate you, Craig, being helpful and whatnot. I'm not trying to bag on you. Just want to make sure we're keeping the links safe for everyone. Okay, so what have we learned here? So one, I always like to put lights 45 degrees from each other. Right now, I'm about the same. They're actually up here in the ceiling of this. The lighting I have right now is what I'd use for green screen. I probably wouldn't do too much different. I have a soft light that's above me that is illuminating my shoulders and whatnot. I'd probably use a hard light. So right now it's a 1x1 softbox or 1x1 LED softbox. I would probably put a Fresnel or some other kind of hard light to do that. Fresnel is nice because you can focus it, and you, in our case, we can dim them so we can actually change their power, so you don't have the super intensity on them. Though hard light will cast different shadows, so you have to control it a little bit more. Putting minus green gels on the backlight will help suppress the green spill and will turn it into white light, so it won't be as easily affected by when you're pulling your key. Okay, so let's see here. Is there any questions on lighting? The mic is the Rodecaster. No, Podcaster, Rode Podcaster. It's like $200. Can you specify what hard light and soft light means? Yes, Kenny. Hard light is the sun. Soft light is a cloudy day. So a intense, small light source is going to be a hard light, going to cast hard, deep shadows like in the middle of the summer when you have the long, really dark shadows. Soft light is diffused light. So what it is it's the same amount of light, but diffused over a larger source, which makes it more pleasing, makes it more soft. So it means that my shadows on my nose, you're not seeing, well, I got a mustache, so you can't really see it, but I don't have shadows here or in the wells of my eyes or anything like that I would otherwise. I think even if let's see here. Yeah, you can see the shadows on my face aren't really too bad. Now I'm using a camera with a lot of dynamic range, but Actually, can you provide us with the equipment list and brands you are using? Wow. That's quite the ask. Camera C200 lights are light panel Astra 1x1s, soft. The hard lights are light panels Sola 6 pluses, and I'm using a Rodecaster with a with the Podcaster mic. I think that's everything. No worries. I didn't explain it all. Is what we're learning good only for waist up or full body? I have a project coming up that will require full body, and I'm worried about the shadows under their feet. Well, yes, the shadows under. Well, you shouldn't have to worry about the shadows under their feet. You won't see shadows under the feet because they're going to be standing, right? But shadows on the ground, yes, those should be concerned. And I would say, think about the composition they're going in. Are they going to be walking on bright white ground? If they're not, then maybe you can light them so that they have shadows, but it's okay if they're keyed out a little bit, if the shadows are translucent or whatever. A lot of times tests will help you in these cases, especially if you're doing a full body key. Do tests before you have your subject matter in there. Do the legwork to make sure you know how to pull a good key from that scene before you have your actor or whatever in there, in putting in your space. Like if they're walking in the scene. Well, if they're walking in the scene, so as soon as you start adding a subject moving, the camera moving, or the background moving, all of this stuff is incredibly more difficult because now you have to place the background so that the subject moves with it. So if the background's static and the subject's moving into frame, that works. People can interface and that kind of thing, the background. But think if you're moving the camera, or if the camera needs to have any kind of natural movement or whatever, it's probably easier to do that after the fact because the relation between the background and the subject matter change, right? And so if you have some distance between that, you'll have to replicate that by moving it, and your background matte will have to be ginormous. And that's actually when you talk about Marvel movies. Huge scenes with really loads and loads of green screen. You know what they're doing there? They're doing humongous, I'm talking 100, 200, 400 megapixel backgrounds. These are huge backgrounds with lots of detail, mattes together just to make it so that the subjects can be keyed in different places within it and it won't be a big deal. So your background needs to be high quality, so does your shot. But then once you start moving, you also need to have the relative space between your camera moving and your background. What I would recommend, don't do that. That's a really high-end filmmaking tools, and at that point you're going to need to be putting marks on everything. And I guarantee you, if you're doing that kind of thing and you're learning today how green screen works, you're not going to get there yet. So get the basics down, pull a good key, pull a good full body key so you can place them, make sure you light them for the actual scene, and then you'll have a lot better situation. Figured it'd be more difficult in this webinar. Quite going to cover what something like I questioned. Yeah, Don. I mean, it's a very, like I said, there's all sorts of, you'll have to then track all your cameras. You'll need all of the movement data. You'll need to then reapply that to all your things. It's definitely above what this webinar is going to cover. And I would say if you are, if you want to do that kind of thing, try it. Just do it. Do it and see what kind of frustrations you have. And you'll be aware of the things that you'll need to do differently when you try it again. And keep trying until you get it right. The problem is, that is a very high-end, very difficult thing that Hollywood pays millions of dollars to deal with. And a lot of times it ends up being a frame-by-frame cleanup, and that really they'd be doing that anyway. And so green screen and that kind of stuff doesn't necessarily matter because they're going frame by frame and cleaning everything up like as if it was a still frame. If we had a Marvel shoot on one of our sites, the green screeners were massive, and I mean massive. Must have cost thousands and thousands. I'd say millions likely, dude. They are humongous. You'll see sets where just certain areas will be that way, which I think is actually a little more manageable. So put your subject in a situation where most of the stuff around it's what you want to see, and then just cover up areas where you want to rematte. But even then, that's you're talking about creating compositions to place within that composition that's supposed to look real. And that's Hollywood. That's big money. That's lots of hours. That's high expertise. So very high end as far as that goes. So before I get sidetracked too much on questions, you can keep on asking them. I'm going to jump into how I would do a simple key and go from there. Okay, so this is Premiere Pro, just updated it. Nothing in here is anything you don't get from inside the box. Let's see here. Oh, I guess I called it 2020. It's not 2020 anymore. So here is our original composition shot, right? This is a big, giant backdrop that is 12 feet tall and 20 feet wide. Imagine you're seeing 15 or more feet of it here. This area down here by the bottom, that shadow, totally a bummer, but he doesn't go into it. So I'm actually going to mat it out. And then these are actually lights, and that's so that we could light him. And he's pretty far from the background here. So like there's a good amount of distance. You'll see he's in black. So it's a real easy key. He's got short hair. And of course he doesn't move a lot. So the key's actually going to be a pretty simple one to pull. But this is the situation we have, right? So we dressed him to look like he's going into a winter scene, even though we're in California. His microphone doesn't have a cable, but we'll just assume it's wireless, right? And the only thing that we didn't do here is the color temperature. He seems kind of warm, so we'll do that actually through color correction. Do you iron the green screen? In this case, we didn't. I actually recommend just shooting a shallow depth of field and getting further away if you can. It makes it a lot easier. This green screen was ruined in a flood here, so no steaming actually is the easiest way to get those out, and it's time consuming, but you can. This was actually designed for green screen. The only problem is it's like up to here, up to like 2 or 3 feet in it. It's all waterlogged, and we just had to throw it out. We don't have as big of a studio now, so we don't have the need anyway. I have a backdrop that's like a Westcott backdrop that's has a black, gray, white, green. That's pretty cheap that we can put in the background if we're doing a medium shot. I don't really love using green screen to replace a person in a full scene unless it's a place I can't go. If I don't have access to the place or whatever, just because it's so easy to make a scene look great when you're not doing this stuff, and it becomes very, very, very complicated the more pizzazz you want on your scene. So, if he walked into the scene, now my garbage mats can work. If he was moving around or moving erratically, also would be difficult if he wasn't wearing such a dark shirt. So these are all things that I use to make it so it's easier to pull the key, but also, are they necessary for the story? And that's always the question you need to ask yourself for any production you're doing, regardless if it's green screen or whatever you're doing it for. Is it necessary to use this technique, green screen? Do I need a green screen, or could I just go there and shoot it? I made a scene recently that was it was in a park we have here, but we wanted to make it look like Times Square, or I'm sorry, Central Park in New York. So we added skyscrapers above the High Line. It was a whole lot easier just to CG in those than it was to find a green screen that would have been big enough, because I would have needed thousands of feet to be able to do that. Anyhow, let's get back into how I'm doing this. So if I look back here to my done, to the scene, it's very much a winter wonderland we're putting him into. Let's look at the effects controls that I'm using. And let's see here. That's just, I have crop. So let's turn these off for a second just to show you. Are you using OBS Switcher? No, I'm not. I'm using Sling Studio, and it's just my computer going directly into it and then into my camera. So I'm switching it on an iPad. Okay, so here is the actual scene, right? And I zoomed in on him a little bit because we want him a little bit bigger in it, but you can see all sorts of garbage in here. So the first thing is I'm cropping. So I'm just getting rid of the stuff where he's not going to move. If I go along this whole scene here, sorry, I'm on a laptop, so it's kind of a small screen. But if I go around this movement, he doesn't move around a lot, right? So I could even probably pull this a little bit closer. But what that means is I now only have to deal with this stuff to key. Now, yeah, as you can see in the scene, let's see here, I'll get rid of that too, that it's a little darker down here than it is up here. And so we'll have to probably deal with that when we key, when I'm actually doing the key. So I'm just going to show you my key before here, and then let's show my background matte. I like to put a color behind before I put my backdrop, just to kind of see if there's any garbage, so I can play this and you'll see, areas of poor key all over the place. And looks like this was actually pretty easy. So let's see what it took to do that key. So Ultra Key, there's a couple different here. Let's go to here, and I'll just first off just go and go to see what keying tools we have. Now, this is nice. Keying used to be something you had to buy extra software for. Now there's some pretty strong and great keying tools within Premiere or Final Cut Pro or Resolve or any of those things. Now, are there better keyers than others? Yeah, you betcha. And it means just more so it's easier to pull your key, or there's more parameters on them. And I actually, so say this color key, I'm gonna put it on here just to show how simple it is. All it is pick a color, pick your tolerance. You choose if you want to make a thin or a thick edge, and then if you want to feather or anything. So this is going to be just one click right around, let's see here. And then as I pull this away, oh, looking pretty good. Wow, that was pretty impressive, except let's show you what happened here, because it's a whole lot easier once you put something behind it. You can pull key over black and it's nothing but. So let's see here. Let's go back to the beginning of the clip. He's moving around. Actually, surprisingly, not a lot moving around. I actually just see a little bit over here. Let's see, we'll go back here. And let's see if we're pulling. So you can see the key as it's pulling out of the hottest spots first, and then the darker spots as I go up the tolerance. And you can see I can start showing some transparency on him, and I want to be careful with that. So I'm going to keep on pulling until all the things that need to be keyed out are keyed out, and the things that aren't there. So wow, that's just is a good idea to use Blender for stuff like this. Sure, I'm not sure what Blender is. Our idea here is pulling a good key with the tools that everyone gets. So instead of going and spending money on plugins and that kind of stuff, which, is fun and all the rest. And if you're doing a lot of keying, it's something to pay attention to, or if you have a hard key, you might need to. But if you lit it properly and you made sure that your subject matter is lit for the matte it's going into and everything, the composite it's going into, then you won't have to deal with that. So you won't have a hard key to pull. So let's go back and let's look at other things. So we have Ultra Key. Now, Ultra Key has lots of other features, right? So I'm going to first tell it what color green I want to do. So you can see here now it just kind of makes that into white, right? The background. So if I get rid of that, you can see it's that. But you can still see all the shadows, right? Isn't that kind of weird? So shadows, we can actually... So you can see here, as I pull up the shadows, it's bringing those in more. But if I pull them out, oh, look at that. It just went away. Now, just adjusting those two things, I'm mostly there. But you can see if I play this back, let's bring this full screen, there's going to be all sorts of nastiness over here and over here. See, it's just dancing around, just going, hey, look at me. I'm not real. You can see some stuff dancing here. So how do we deal with that? So tolerance sometimes can be a good place to start, but that doesn't seem to be changing anything. So this is the trial and error. Blender is a 3D program, not intended for all this at all. Yeah, that's why it threw me off. Actually, Boris FX owns Mocha, and Mocha has, so Boris FX has a really cool keyer that actually uses Mocha. So what it does is it actually tracks your subject, and it does keying, but it also does a track matte, and it does it in real time. So it'll make a matte for your subject. And so not only will it be keying, but also matting. So it's like you went in frame by frame. It's pretty awesome, but it's not free. So we're not going to talk about it today. So I'm going to take all this stuff back to 0 here. And you can, on this, I see if I change this to alpha channel, I can see kind of what things are being bothered. So I do this, I bring it in his jacket, and I don't want that. I want him to be like a perfect white. So I'm gonna bring down my highlights. That doesn't do anything, right? And this is kind of the game sometimes, just kind of trying and seeing what things make differences, right? Pedestal, oh, it makes a good difference there. All right, so let's put that back into composite, and I'm gonna bring that up. Let's see here, we're getting close to the end here, so I'm not sure if I'll pull a full key here using Ultra Key, because like I said, there's a lot more tools here, which is great, but it also means that it might take a lot more to actually adjust. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's see here, I'm going to crop him out, crop out these lights. So left, come on. There, right there. Turn off this key just so I can see how close I am. So left, I can get a lot closer. Right, I can get a lot closer there. Okay, cool. So really, I'm not dealing with a lot of keying now, right? There's 1/3 of the screen now needs to be keyed. So if I turn this back on, wow, look at that. But you can still see he's got all sorts of garbage here. And if we just went back to that single key click, I'm sorry, what was it called? Ultra key, no, color key, I think, right? K-E-Y, color key. The thing is if you can do this, one click in tolerance, that's going to probably pull the best key you could possibly do. The more simple you can make it, the better you light the scene for green screen, and the better you let your subject, the easier the key will be. Like this, one click and one fader, and I have something that is awesome. I mean, I'd be really happy. You could work really hard to get a key that good, that quickly, or not that quickly, but just that good. It seems it's really good. And the reason why is because we set it up really well. Otherwise, you have to go into all of those different things. So the cool thing is Ultra Key has, I'm gonna put it back on here. Oh. Color editing, we'll go back to this one. I don't know what I did here. Sorry, everyone. Effects. Okay, so make that bigger. Metadata. My goodness, what did I do? Effect controls. Okay, effect controls. If I click on here, I can see all this, the different things they can do. And the cool thing is, so like let's just look at all of these different tools. So one, there's some color correction in there. There used to be a really big issue, and I would almost always color correct before I would key, because you could create more contrast, making the key easier. The more contrast it is in your shot, from your subject to your background, the easier the key is going to be choosing. And in this case, let's see here. Nope, don't need any of that. And saturation, luminance, those aren't going to be helpful for us. Now, spill suppression. Desaturate, so you can make your shot less saturated if that's an issue. Choose the range. Now, spill, this is going to be a helpful area. So if you have spill on your shoulders, I don't have anything here, so we don't need to deal with that. And then matte cleanup. So this would be choking your matte closer to the edge of, so say you have like a nice ring around it. Sometimes when you're keying, let's see if I can fake that. No, I need to actually pick my key first. So pretty simple when you, let's see here. That way we can see the background. If you're able to submit your YouTube link to me at a later time, maybe after the webinar, you could take a look at a green screen video project I did and give me some feedback. Maybe Don. I'm a busy guy. If you're a Plus member, send an email and I can help you. Otherwise, not so much. Thanks. Okay, so the thing is if you're fixing a problem, you're already lost. If you've already shot it and you haven't lit it properly, that's a lot of work. So light properly is my big point. So here, pull that back a little bit. That's pretty good. Let's see here. Can I get it to be? So that's the edge. You can see how it's like making him small. Like see around his edge, it's all kind of blurry. That's not good. You don't want to do that. I don't like softening the edges. Contrast can help sometimes, not so much in this case. Choke. So that's just that bringing it in on the edge. So tolerance, where is that? Tolerance there, shadows, pull that back. Spill, pull that up, range, whoa. How's that look? Looks pretty good. But like I said, can't beat the one click. Way better key, and no big deal, and it's there. Okay, with that, it's 12. If I have any questions, I'm going to kind of get everything situated here, give you guys some reminders, and then if you all, any questions, I'll answer them, videomaker.com/live, and I will try to answer you for the next 10 minutes or so, since we had that breakup at the beginning. So next webinar is going to be Mastering Depth of Field on February 24th, 11 p.m. Pacific time. Where do we get the backgrounds? Steven, what kind of backgrounds? So before DSLRs took over the production, shallow depth of field was extremely difficult to achieve with traditional camcorders. Today, many shooters overcompensate and go overboard with shallow depth of field. This webinar covers not only how to achieve a nice depth of field, but also best practices and when to use it. Thank you, Steve. Let's see here. Does color correction affect green keying? Yes, it does, Pedro. So if you are color correction and color correction sometimes wants to be before keying, sometimes it wants to be after it. So it really depends on how your key is affected by the color change, the color correction you do. If you get a nice key you like, then grade after that. If you need to grade the shot because your key is not pulling out the way you want it to, grade before the key. I think his face needs color correction. I think you're right. So let's see here. I'm going to quickly show what I would do here. Effect controls. I'm going to get rid of the ultra key. And I'm going to do it on the outside of it. And the reason why he's just too hot, right? So he's too warm. I want him to look a little colder. And I'll put him in his scene. And let's see here. I want him to go blue, not green. Where are you? Tint is not the way I want you to go. Okay. Sorry, let's see here. I'll bring the shadows back up. And he looks pretty good there. That looks like he fits in the scene. It looks a little colder. You referred to negative green light. Yeah, so there's a gel called Minus Green. And what it is it's going to work with the green to make your light appear pure white. So that would be the tip for the back. Your rim light is, if you're dealing with spill from your background, Minus Green. It's a readily available gel that you can put on any light, and it will help you get rid of that spill. Any lighting tips for people with long flyaway hair in front of the green screen? So to keep it easier, try to get them to use some hairspray. Getting one, I don't know if anybody, their style of their hair requires flyaways. So, maybe spend some more time styling the hair so that it doesn't have that. But in those cases, they are going to make your key more difficult. So one, if there is flyaway, make sure it's not moving. If the hair's moving around, it's going to be more difficult. The thing is about the flyaways is likely you'll end up keying them out, and that can work for you. But it's likely that they'll disappear. Sometimes they'll disappear and they won't look like they're missing. And that's great. That's fantastic. You win. But a lot of times you'll actually see it looks strange, like the hair's going in a certain direction, all of a sudden it's gone. Like they just cut that there. It's weird. It looks funny. Just depends on the scene and how you're dealing with it, or the angle and whatnot. So sometimes you can get lucky. I think it's for a green screen, every minute you put into preparation is going to just give you so much benefit on the back end. It'll make it so your key is super easy. It's one click, green, bam, put in your background, they're there. I mean, that's how easy it should be if you properly light. I mean, the pros in Hollywood, you know, the people that are really working and doing this stuff for a living, they are, the scenes are lit properly, and they are able to pull keys really simply. Their problem more is fitting them into the subject, getting and doing all the tracking and all those other things. That's where they're spending their time, not on just pulling the key. When you say minus green, do you mean magenta? Yes and no, Pedro. There's actually a gel called minus green. Yes, it's a magenta color, but it's actually meant to be used in this case, minus green. There's also minus blue. And minus orange, or color temperature orange, CTO. But yeah, absolutely. Magenta would probably work. It's what color do you add to green to make white light? That's what you'll need. But minus green is that. That's what it's called as far as a gel. But yeah, it's around magenta. I'm guessing magenta would probably work at a pinch. Okay, well, I think that's, I haven't gotten too many other questions. Let's see here. I was watching a tutorial filming where they advised to bring the color and the camera settings down, then fix color in post. Would this work for green screen instances? If you are shooting video that's compressed, fixing the white balance in post is a losing battle. It's going to affect things you don't want it to, and you just don't have enough information to really change it without affecting other things. And the idea of that is not only is the image compressed, but so is the color space, so the sampling of the color, so the camera you're not actually working with a file that sees 3 shades of green, but it rather marginalized those together and made 1 shade of green. That's great, but in nuance, it's not going to be so good. And so when you're talking about correcting white balance, it's a whole lot better to be proper white balance for so that the subject looks proper and to light your background properly than to play with white balance to try to trick the camera to do X, Y, or Z. Maybe that's a trick that some people might need to use, but it's not something I would say is something you should use unless it's just what's getting the job done. I mean, here's the thing. All these rules are meant to tell you how it all works. So if you're able to do something that works around that or fixes your problem that you're dealing with, you should do it. Are you better lighting the green screen from above with strip lights if possible? Randall, lighting a green screen evenly is not an easy feat. The larger your screen is, the more difficult it's going to be. The more difficult it is to hide the lights that are illuminating the background. But you want to make sure your background's evenly lit before you start working on your subject. And, that might not be that it's super bright, but that it's all evenly lit. I mean, you don't want dark. You don't want to be dealing with that. But you want to make sure it's all fully illuminated at the same intensity so that when you pick a green, it's choosing all the greens that are like that to get rid of. I mean, that's truly what you're doing as far as this goes. Hey, I want to get rid of everything that's this color green. And that's what you're telling the keyer to do. That's a simple idea of it. And then it's getting rid of that. So could you use red? Could you use any color? Sure. But it could negatively affect your subject matter depending on what it is. Thoughts on moving the camera around while filming, or should it be sitting on a tripod? Kenny, lock it down. Don't move it around. You'll start getting some really, you'll have to deal with parallax, which is the difference in speed of which a background moves to your subject matter. I'm sure you've done this before. You've seen this, people holding a camera and spinning around in a field, holding it out like this and going all around. Now, they might not be moving that fast, but the background looks like it's moving really fast. So, as you have a near, far background or foreground, background, and your subject matter, those all move at a different rate based on the perspective of the camera. So you'll have to deal with that if you're going to key it with your background, because now your background needs to move a little bit to make the viewer not go, this is bull crap. This is not real. So you want to make sure to be I would say lock down unless you want those headaches. And then if you do, make sure you're putting markers on all of your, all the different depths of your scene, because you're going to need to track those and place something in it and replace that. So, if you're doing that and your background is way closer than what your background actually would be, you're going to have to just sit there and trial and error until the background moves the way you want it to, so it actually tricks the eye. Because this is camera magic. We're doing magician crap here. We're fooling the eye into thinking it's seeing something else, and if that fooling is not good, then it won't stand up. The problem is, go watch some old movies. Don't watch Jurassic Park, because they actually did a really great job, but they did a lot of practicals, meaning real life things instead of green screen. But that, the first Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, whatever the third one was. Anyway, those, you go watch those. They don't stand up well over time. CG in general doesn't stand up well over time. And green screen's one of those things. I don't know how many different 90s videos, music videos and stuff that you'll watch and be like, that's green screen, doesn't look right at all. I honestly try not to use green screen ever, just for the sake of it never looks right, even when you do it really, really well. But then again, I'm not making anything where my subject matter needs to be in a location that I don't have access to. So with that said, thank you for everybody for tuning in. We will see you 1 month from now with Shallow Depth of Field. Same time. It'll be on a Wednesday on the 24th.